The content of this program represents the opinions, research, and observation of the host and his assessment of scientific evidence available at this time. None of the statements, claims, techniques, dietary guidelines, or supplements mentioned in this program have been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. The information contained herein is for educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for standard care provided by medical practitioners. Any application of the advice presented here is at the listener's own discretion or risk. The information should not be used for self-diagnosis or application. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional before beginning any new nutritional, exercise, or lifestyle improvement program. The host and this station disclaim any responsibility for any adverse effects arising from the use or application of information contained in this program. Now broadcasting from his Nutritional Command Center deep in the heart of Victoria, Texas, charging through the swamp of misconceptions, deception, and myths, bringing to you the newest cutting-edge scientific-based nutrition information so you can enjoy whole spectrum health. Here's the paladin of nutrition and whole foods expert, Labron Allen.
Good morning. Thank you for tuning in to Health Alert. I'm your host, Labron Allen. A lot of health news this morning, starting out with the Washington Post. The wonderful FDA has proposed a way of revamping our relationships with our medical doctors. What is that, you ask? Well, they're actually recommending that many of the prescribed medications that you get through your medical doctor currently will actually be available over the counter. Many medications that you can only get through prescription, they are recommending should be over the counter. What, for example? Well, diabetes medications like glucophage, metformin. They're recommending most, if not all, statins be over the counter. They're recommending many asthma inhalers be over the counter. So we're not talking about light medications for headaches or whatever the case may be. We're talking about pretty powerful medications. So that's a little bit frightening. Certainly that is not going to do anything to help the health of this country. In fact, most likely quite the opposite. Remember a few weeks ago we talked about Fukushima. Again, Fukushima, those nuclear reactors began melting down. Reactors 1 through 3 back in March of 2011. And after a few months, we heard absolutely nothing about it. And there was basically a media blackout. And like we talked about a few weeks ago, basically the way that the EPA dealt with the amount of radiation that was coming into the North American continent, especially on the West Coast, was by increasing the safety levels of the different types of radiation and proclaiming that it was safe. Actually, not only safe, but good for you. Radiation is now good for you. Even though it's being shown in quite a bit of the milk in California and some of the other food products as well. Well, there is more news now coming out of Japan. In fact, the headline reads, Fukushima Reactor 4 requires urgent intervention. A coalition calls for emergency UN action to halt catastrophic release of radiation. Now, of course, this radiation, if it indeed does become released into the atmosphere, I'm sure will just continue to be good for us, even though we start having children who have two heads and glow in the dark. That's obviously what needs to happen with humankind. However, Japan is quite concerned about it, and they are asking for as much help as possible, and we certainly hope that the possibility of this reactor number 4 melting down does not occur. The problem with it is that, do you remember the spent fuel rods that they were storing on top of these reactors? Which obviously that makes a lot of sense. But anyway, most of the spent fuel rods happen to be on reactor number 4. About 10,893 spent fuel rods. The problem is that if anything happens with this reactor number 4, and these fuel rods are part of the meltdown, that there will be up to 85 times more long-lived radioactivity than was ever released in Chernobyl. 85 times more. And we know that they're in areas around Chernobyl are still having problems even decades later. So, kind of wonder why that isn't in headline news everywhere, but it isn't. Well, we all know that smoking tobacco and cigarettes is bad for you. Usually, among many things, we hear that it is the tar that begins lodging in the respiratory system that eventually promotes cancers and other things. However, a new report is coming out that they are finding that there are large amounts of microscopic glass fibers in cigarette smoke. And so every time someone inhales the cigarette smoke, they are getting shards of glass ripping through their lung tissue, and then the tar becomes lodged in between those fissures and lesions. So that only gives you more reason to never touch cigarettes. The real question is, why on earth would they be putting fiberglass particles in cigarettes? Going on about this, they say that there are up to 12,000 microscopic glass fibers tightly bound together in a cigarette. 12,000. And this is just ridiculous. Once these become lodged in your respiratory system, they estimate that it takes 10 to 15 years to dissipate. And that actually kind of goes into why, after a person has quit smoking for decades afterwards, that oftentimes certain portions of their lungs during a nutritional exam still test. Because I have always heard in the past that after about 5 years of no longer smoking, the respiratory system returns back to someone who never smoked as far as their function. However, I have tested people who only smoked as young adults, and it's been 40, 50 years since they've smoked, and still certain areas of the lobes of their lungs are not nearly as healthy as they should. And now, this certainly may be one reason why that is the case. So that's pretty interesting news this morning. Now, our next upcoming seminar is going to be May the 22nd, on Tuesday, of course, at 7 p.m. However, the venue has changed. We are no longer going to have these presentations at the Hampton Inn, although we've been there for about 4 years now. We are moving the location of our free health presentations and having them within our own office, within the Natural Health Clinic, which is located at 3908 North John Stockbauer, Suite C. And we have a nice conference room in there in which we will be holding these free health presentations from now on. You will need to RSVP in order to get into and reserve your seat for these free health presentations. We have very limited space. We can only have around 10 individuals. And so if you are interested in attending any of these free health seminars, you really need to call Tanya at the front desk. That number is area code 361-575-4683 and reserve your seat. Well, this free health presentation coming up on May the 22nd is about period problems. So I'm sure that all you men out there are really going to be quite interested in this. But anyway, here's the thing about problems with your menstrual cycles. Most women think that what they have to go through during their cycles is normal. And I am here to tell you that it is not normal. It is very common, but it is not normal. If you have any issues with your cycles, and what do I mean by that? Well, if you have tender breasts, if you have any kind of emotional changes before your periods or during your periods, if you have headaches, if you have sweet cravings, if you have bloating or fluid retention, if you have heavy periods, if you have clotting, or just a heavy flow with cramping. Those things, although again common, they are not normal. And so this free health presentation will go into, number one, why these things are so common, and then number two, more importantly, what you can do to eliminate these different types of symptoms. Now, these symptoms that you have with your menstrual cycles are actually signs that your body is not balanced and that your hormonal or endocrine system is not balanced. Now, why care about that? The reason is that a balanced hormonal system is not only having to do with your reproductive system and cycles, but it has to do with your entire body, systemically speaking. And if you have balanced hormones, then you and your body are able to go a long way in naturally preventing many of the diseases that people commonly deal with today. So again, that free health presentation will be May the 22nd, Tuesday at 7 p.m. at our clinic, the Natural Health Clinic, again located at 3908, that's 3908 North John Stockbauer, Suite C. And you can call Tanya at area code 361-575-4683 to reserve your seat. Now, how can you contact us? Well, first of all, you can through email at radiocomments@healthimprovementprograms.com. Again, the email is radiocomments@healthimprovementprograms.com. Also, you can like us on 2 Facebook pages. The first one is our clinic Facebook page, which you can find at www.facebook.com/natural.health.clinic. And then you can also like us on our Health Alert Radio Show Facebook page. You can find that at Health Alert Show. Again, that's Health Alert Show. So in studio today, I have with me a good friend, longtime patient. It's Lori Gerritsen of Earthworks here locally. How long have you guys been in business, Lori?
We're going on 20 years.
20 years, wow. That's amazing. Now, Lori has always been very interesting to talk to. I've always enjoyed conversations with her. She is a wealth of information when it comes to organic nurseries and gardening and so forth. She has a huge amount of information about herbology and the different uses of those things. And we oftentimes find ourselves in conversation about the similarities between what she does and about what I do. And in fact, it seems as though as the decades have gone on and people have moved away from farming, local farms, maybe even family farms, that has actually been part of why we now find ourselves in such a health crisis, that people do not realize that the similarities of plants and growing those and gardening and the different difficulties that you have with the soil and with the diseases that those kinds of vegetations may encounter is very similar in caring for that as it is for the body. The same principles and concepts apply. So I'm going to open it up to Lori for her to comment on that. What do you think about that concept, Lori?
Well, yes, that's true. And first of all, thank you for having me, Labor.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Quite a pleasure, honor to be here with you today.
Thank you.
And people, I believe that people, they do know this. They're just not reminded of this. Because when I kind of draw it to their attention, the similarities, like you were just talking about with their health and with the health of their plants, you can see the little light bulb go off that, well, yeah, that does make sense. But what we have, again, we've been here, we're going on 20 years now, having the nursery. And we're totally organic, so we do everything naturally, just like nature always planned, I believe, on things being the way things have started this planet from the beginning. And that means no synthetic products and no man-made products, everything that is natural. And the first few years at the nursery were very slow, and I sat there a lot doing reading and things, and people would come in, and then when they would kind of see that we didn't have chemicals and things they were looking for, it was like, okay, well,
they didn't have the Miracle Grow. It's like, whoops, that's
right.
Not what I'm looking for.
Just a couple of hippies, and in fact, some people even said, you're just a couple of old hippies sitting here on top of this little property. But anyway, that has so changed over the years. So
interesting.
So not terribly, but just very, very much taken a turnaround.
So you find that here locally, there's really been a movement towards organic?
Oh, yes, there has. But like I said, there was some lean years, early years where people were not aware. But the word is spreading. Thank goodness. Things. People are becoming more aware, and but again, when people come in and they maybe are asking about how, what would I recommend for raising this tomato plant, and it's not looking so good. And I will always ask, certain questions, just like a doctor, a naturopath, everybody has to do. You have to diagnose, you have to ask questions. And
so if there was a problem, let's say that the leaves of the tomato plant were turning a different color than they should be, what would be some of the questions you'd start asking?
Well, first I want to know, is it in the ground or is it in a pot? I want to know how much sun it gets, how do they water it, and what do they feed it? And that's the question right there. What do you feed it? And a lot of times they will say, well, I do it all naturally. I just use my Miracle-Gro, and, bingo, there it is.
Now, why would they think that Miracle-Gro is natural?
Well, and again, I don't think they kind of know labrum, but they don't, they just don't stop. Because then when I start explaining, now, Miracle-Gro products are typically synthetic products and nothing, natural in them. Then they again, like I always say, you can just kind of see the little light coming on that, well, okay, I guess so. And it's like the people that have a pest, aphids on their, a tomato plant. And I'm trying to get rid of these aphids, and that Malafon, it's I keep using it, but it's not working. Well, the light comes on in my head then when you say, you're spraying something like that on something edible, and then you're eating it. And then when I will say something to them, then, well, I wash it off. Well, no, you don't. When you're spraying something like that on anything, whether a tomato or asparagus or, a cucumber, things like that, those things are going to be absorbed into the plant, just like your fertilizer would be to,
Okay, so let me see if I have this straight. Because one of the things that we deal with as far as people's health quite a bit is different forms of chemical toxicity. And one of the specific forms we test for is different pesticides. And they're like, well, I'm eating produce and salads, and how am I getting these pesticides? I always wash them off before I put them in the salads, exactly what you just said. So if I'm understanding what you're saying that once these synthetic chemicals, of which, correct me if I'm wrong, these are actually petrochemical derivatives, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so they basically come from crude oil, and they're manufactured in different things and then sprayed on these vegetation. Is that correct?
Yes, or soil, water, people
put in the soil, and then the plant itself draws it up.
Yeah.
Okay, so they think that if they wash it off the skin of these different types of vegetables, then they're getting rid of the pesticides. And what you're saying is the plant itself is drawing it up into the produce, within the produce itself. So no matter how much scrubbing you're doing, you're not getting rid of it.
Well, because think of it. If you have, all right, we have a tomato plant sitting here. It's not looking good, so we're going to feed it with our Miracle-Gro. Well, if I just am pouring that Miracle-Gro or spraying it fully or spraying it on there, or whether I'm pouring it in the soil, how can it help if it just stays, right on the outside, or just stays on the top of the leaf? To benefit, something has to go. It would be like taking my supplements I get from you and washing my body with them. Well,
yeah, it wouldn't help much, would it?
No, it's got to get inside. And the same thing.
You mean they don't work by osmosis?
No, not yet. But it has to get inside. So with everything that's living, they have to get in there. So all of the synthetic and chemical man-made products that people are using are inside there. So certainly, yes, at least they are washing them. So that's, I guess, kind of a good thing.
That's something, right?
Yeah, something.
But they have the wrong concept. They think that is saving them from the pesticides, and that's not the case.
They have the wrong concept. So yes, but it is in there, and it's in their soil. And nature made our soils living. Everything was living. And then, especially in this country, after World War II, chemicals just explode. The synthetic products just exploded. During World War II, we tried to find better ways to kill other people. And so we did. Isn't that great?
That's wonderful, yeah.
And then...
through use of petrochemical derivatives.
Yes. And then they decided, well, now, after World War II...
hey, let's use this on our food. That'll be good for us.
We have more people that we need to be feeding in this world, so we need to produce more food. And we have more insects and problems and fungal diseases and other virus diseases, things like this in our plants. We need to get rid of those. So from all of those wants, then all of these chemicals came into fashion, and especially here in America, and that just took over everybody's concept of farming. And so the farming then over the years, which it's been many decades since the beginning of or after World War II, we have killed the soils. We have killed the microbes. All of the microbial life, has been killed off, just from over farming and from overuse of all kinds of synthetic, man-made products.
So what you're saying is that when someone goes to plant a tomato plant, let's say, within the soil, so not within a pot, but within the soil, and they start having problems with the growth of this tomato plant, that really they need to start looking at the environment in which it is in. That's
Yes.
something about the soil, the environment which it's growing in. It's missing things it needs.
Yes, exactly. And really, that, again, I say that in a nutshell, organic gardening is just putting back the life to the soil. I mean, that's all it is. That's what we're putting back, life in the soil. And a lot of times, new organic people will see the analysis. On a fertilizer bag, anything that has fertilizer in it, you're going to have 3 numbers on that bag that's going to tell you, how much nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium that's in there. And with organic products, those numbers are always very low. And people will see that, and they'll think, well, how can this do any good for my lawn? Because I'm normally using, this time of year, a 21714 would be the synthetic product they're using, and you're showing me a 826 or some smaller numbers. How can that work? Well, it's apples and oranges. You're comparing apples and oranges with organic.
Something live to something dead.
Yes, we're just feeding the soil, and everything comes from the soil. So the healthier your soil is, then the healthier the plants are.
Yeah, that is a wonderful correlation.
Yeah,
because as you well know, in our clinic, we use whole food concentrates. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the back of the nutrition label, you'll see that the potencies, everyone is after typically a very high potency. Mm-hmm. So you have vitamin C or ascorbic acid, quote unquote, and they want 5,000 milligrams. But you take a look at a standard process bottle of Cataplex C, which means the entire complex of that C vitamin, as it would appear in food, there might be 10 milligrams. They're like, what's this? This isn't what I need. Yeah. But they don't understand that it's the synergy, the way that God created these nutrients that has the powerful effect. And it's only because they're taking something dead, synthetic, that they need such high potency to get any kind of effect in the body. And basically what you're saying is the same thing.
Yes, it is. And I mean, so it's just so simple. I mean, to me, basically, it's the same thing. We're just dealing with different,
life form.
Life form.
That's really it. And that's why it is so similar.
But it's just so important with all the things that we hear today just like everything the world we live in, just all of the news that you were giving, all of the things that we have to live and breathe and work with.
But Lori, radiation's good for us. That's what the government says,
Well, let's give me some radiation.
Yeah, we need to start glowing for sure.
Yeah,
it's really crazy. Listening to you, it recalled to mind a couple of things. The first one is that I just saw a report a couple of days ago that they are finding that one of the reasons that insects become resistant to these different synthetic pesticides is that they, as soon as it is the plant or the vegetation is sprayed, these insects go and start ingesting certain forms of bacteria that make them completely resistant to the synthetic chemical being sprayed. I mean, that is just amazing.
To think that but that is so amazing that nature has made them that way, that they have the intelligence to, which, I really can't call it intelligence, but they have programmed.
But it is an
intelligence.
intelligence.
Yes. That they will do that. Well, hello, what has man been thinking that would happen to our intelligence? But we have been, people are sitting in front of that television or that computer screen and just taking in all of that, all the media. I mean, just
the
everything.
Propaganda. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah, how many times do you hear, and I don't watch television, but I know it's on there, Miracle Grow has got to do advertising.
That's why you're intelligent, because you don't watch television.
Yeah, well, so I know Miracle Grow has got to have advertising, and they have for centuries. Well, when's the last time you saw a commercial? I mean, have you ever even seen, do they have commercials for organic things?
I don't believe I've ever seen a commercial on television. I've heard on radio. Commercials for organic products.
Better, but anyway, so it's just been drilled into people, and again, that's why I just think people don't mean to be doing, and I don't want to say it's right or wrong, but they don't mean to be doing the unhealthier thing, It's just they haven't, really
They're
thought
ignorant.
about it. So yeah,
Yeah,
so
they just don't have the information they need.
That's what
Right.
I always hope to do, and especially with the kids. I mean, that's the next generation, and those little guys are like little sponges, so they just take it all in, and they kids naturally, I believe, were born to be in nature and to
Right.
work with it, not to
Right.
work against it. And
Yeah, they pick it up rapidly.
And so we just have to kind of open their parents' eyes a little bit and remind them.
Absolutely. And the sad part about the children today is that it is really those individuals that I was referring to that have no idea where food comes from.
That's right.
They just think that the lettuce appears magically in the
That's
store
exactly
somehow.
right, yes.
And they don't realize everything that goes into that. And that is really sad.
Yes, years ago we had we have field trips come to the nursery, and we had Head Start kids come, and the teacher told me, she said, can you take them? Oh, well, first they came to the nursery, and then after that they were going to a grocery store, to the produce section, to see how the trucks brought it in and all. But she said, can we go in your garden and show the kids, your garden? And so I did, and I actually, we took them all down, and they were like first graders, I think, and I pulled a carrot out of the ground. And this one little boy, this has been, 15, 18 years ago, his eyes, when that carrot came out of the ground, you would have thought I had just made a car appear or something. But and I kind of looked at the teacher, and she said, oh, well, a lot of these children don't realize that plants come, out of the ground. And they just had the best time walking around and seeing, we showed them strawberries. In fact, they all had a taste of a strawberry. And but it's true. And she said, just like a meat, they have no idea that meat comes from, a cow that you might pass on the side of the road. Yeah, in a pasture somewhere. And that vegetables come from that. Yeah, they just,
from that source,
they
right.
go to grocery stores and get them. And that's sad that we've been taken away from
our food sources.
Yeah.
Which, that is what creates or destroys health.
That's right.
So that is really quite sad. So, one of the subjects that we talk about frequently on this show on Health Alert is the genetic modification of these different, especially grains, but there's so many things that are genetically modified nowadays. And kind of leading into what you're talking about with the different kinds of synthetic chemicals used after World War II, a few months ago, and you may know more about this, I read a report that they are using an Agent Orange derivative and genetically modifying that with corn. And many of the corn crops now will have this basically Agent Orange pesticide in them. Can you go into more about genetic modification and what's going on with that?
Well, and that's another thing. People just don't, it surprises me that people that don't realize the things that are happening to our foods. But yes,
they seem to think that it's safe. If it's being sold, somehow that means it's safe, which
yes.
that's just, it doesn't make sense, and it's definitely not accurate.
Our government, people will even tell me, our government wouldn't do something like that. Well, open your eyes and do some research. But they are, and Monsanto Company is one of the biggest backers and producers of all of this stuff.
And what does their goal seem to be with that? Why would they do that?
Simply labor, and it's money. It's money. They want.
So how the genetic modifications that they make, how does that make their company or their products more profitable? Because that's what corporations do.
Yes. Take, for example, the products and one of the first things that came out was, back up. Monsanto has bought out almost every seed company in the world. And there's a few mom and pop natural organic companies that are still holding on. But, when somebody comes to your door and hands you that check for thousands and thousands of dollars, I guess it gets kind of, because farming is not easy.
So Monsanto is going around buying
out the seed companies.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so their seed companies then are going to have altered seeds, because when they GMO stuff, all this genetically modified organisms, they go in and they rearrange, mess with the DNA of something.
Okay.
Just like you would.
So
with
it's
the
no
human
longer
being.
that actual substance anymore.
That's right.
It's something
no longer
artificial.
That. And corn, I believe, was the very first thing that they started doing. And in fact, just kind of a side note, when when a farmer on one side of the highway is growing genetically modified corn, which Monsanto makes it really lucrative business of enticing these farmers to buy these seeds. But when a bee comes along, it cannot tell the difference, unfortunately, between any GMO crops and any organic crops. And so what's happening now, these things are we're cross-pollinating on a lot of crops. And so there's really no way of knowing, what you're eating. I mean, there is no way of knowing for sure. No one can tell you.
Even if it says it's organic corn.
Yeah.
Right.
And, the United States is the only country in the world that does not require people to label, the government to label that.
Right. In fact, it's getting to be a big thing recently in Europe.
Yeah.
In fact, they're banning a lot of Monsanto products.
Yes, I've read that. But what they have done with these seeds, though, and of course, keep in mind, people of third world countries, they don't have grocery stores to go shopping and pick out their produce. They have to produce everything that goes in their mouth. They either have to kill an animal or grow it from the ground. Well, again, Monsanto has enticed them to buy these seeds because, and not that they're really, I can't say picking on third world countries, but they're trying to do this all over the world.
It's a good market.
Yeah, exactly. So they have these seeds. They're called Terminator seeds, and what they are altered. They will grow a crop 1 year for you. But if you save the seeds, which again, third world country, that's what people have to do. And they've done that since the beginning of time. You save seeds and you grow them the next season. Right. Well, these seeds will not produce again. They have been, altered.
So you have to purchase it again from Monsanto.
Well, you either purchase the seeds again from the seed company, or Monsanto makes and I can't remember right now what they call it, but it's a solution that you soak the seed in to activate it so that it will turn it on to germinate.
Oh, that's incredible.
So, it all goes, but again, you're just basically like a slave to, Monsanto. But this is what's happening with our foods. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Again, it's just pushing the chemical products and
no studies have been done of how these altered genetically modified products affect human health.
Oh, yes. And then when you read how much research went in to what these were going to do to us, there was hardly any studies done. They might have done it with 30 people, out of the world, and they did it for maybe 6 months or something like that.
Right.
So all of this is coming, we're coming, and to me, it's just like the last couple of years, it's showing up. All of these problems that children are having now.
Autism, 1 in 54 now.
Yes, yeah. And diabetes and asthma. All of this, and it's everything that, I always tell everything that goes in your mouth and that you're breathing and, putting on your skin, it's all going to make a difference. We're seeing now what all this is doing to us.
Just like whatever you choose to do with your plant is either going to make it grow and flourish or
exactly
not.
Right.
And basically we're just the same type of living organism, just a little bit different.
Well, I think, we are the result of what we've grown and eaten or what we've purchased.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much, Lori. This has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you for coming in this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
Good. Very good. Well, there you have it, folks. This is another episode of Health Alert. Thank you very much for tuning in. And until next week, good health to you.